There are moments in life when everything you believed in shatters with a single conversation. I was sitting at our dining room table on a Tuesday evening in late April. My parents had called me down saying they had exciting news about my future. My heart was racing because I had just received my acceptance letter from State University for their engineering program. The kitchen smelled like my mom's pot roast, and the evening light filtered through the curtains in that golden way that made everything feel warm and safe. But something was off. My dad kept glancing at my mom, and my older brother Kyle sat at the far end of the table, unable to meet my eyes. That sick feeling in my stomach told me something was wrong, but I pushed it down. I had no idea my entire future was about to be ripped away in the next 5 minutes. Before we dive into how one conversation destroyed everything I worked for, let me know where you are watching from, and if you have ever felt like the backup plan in your own family. Hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Growing up, I was always the easy kid. My teachers called me responsible. My parents called me low maintenance. What they really meant was that I did not cause problems. I kept my head down, got straight A grades, and never asked for much. Kyle, my older brother, was 4 years ahead of me and the complete opposite. He was loud, charismatic, and constantly in some kind of trouble. Nothing major, just the kind of stuff that made my parents sigh and shake their heads before making excuses. He barely passed high school, scraped through college with C grades, and my parents paid for every cent of it. They never complained. He was their firstborn, their golden child, and I accepted that. I was not jealous. I understood my role in the family. I was the steady one, the one who did not need constant attention. When I was in 10th grade, my dad sat me down and told me they had been saving for my college education. He said if I kept working hard and stayed focused, they would make sure I could go to a good school without drowning in student loans. That promise became everything to me. I built my entire life around it. I started working part-time at a local coffee shop called Riverside Roast when I turned 16. Every morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., worked from 5:30 until 7, then rushed to school. My friends would roll in late, still half asleep, while I had already been awake for hours. After school, I stayed late for robotics club and volunteering because I knew I needed a strong application. At night, I studied until midnight or later. My weekends disappeared into shifts at the coffee shop and homework. While my classmates went to parties and football games, I was either working or buried in textbooks. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to study computer engineering at State University. They had one of the best programs in the region, and I had researched every course, every professor, every opportunity they offered. I even created a spreadsheet to track my savings. Every paycheck from Riverside Roast, I put 70% into my college fund account. I watched that number grow slowly, painfully slowly, but it grew. By senior year, I had saved almost $6,000 myself. Combined with what my parents had saved, I would have around $43,000. It was not enough to cover everything, but with scholarships and maybe some small loans, I could make it work. I trusted my parents completely. They had promised, and they had never broken a promise to me before. Then Kyle came back home. He had graduated college 3 years earlier, and my parents had paid his full tuition at a private school that cost nearly twice what State University would cost me. After graduation, Kyle bounced between jobs. He worked in sales for a few months, hated it, then tried marketing at some startup that folded after 6 months. Then he was a manager at a retail store, but quit after an argument with his boss. My parents never criticized him. They said he was finding himself exploring his options, being entrepreneurial. Around November of my senior year, Kyle moved back into his old bedroom with what he called a game changer. He had a business idea. He wanted to start his own marketing consultancy firm. He had no clients, no real experience, and no business plan that made any sense to me, but my parents ate it up. They called him a visionary. They said he was going to be the next big thing. Kyle started having family meetings where he would talk about his vision. He used words like synergy and disruption and brand optimization. My dad would nod along like it all made perfect sense. My mom would bring him coffee and snacks while he drew diagrams on a whiteboard he had set up in the living room. I was too busy with school and work to pay much attention. I figured it was just Kyle being Kyle, full of big ideas that would fizzle out like everything else he tried. But one night in February, I overheard my dad talking to my mom in their bedroom. I had gotten up to get water, and their door was slightly open. My dad said something about making an investment in Kyle's future, about how this was their chance to set him up for success. My mom agreed. They talked about numbers, about timing, about opportunity. I went back to bed, feeling uneasy, but told myself it was nothing. The night everything fell apart started normally enough. It was the last week of April, and I had just gotten my acceptance letter from State University 2 days earlier. I was floating. I had worked so hard for this, and it was finally real. My parents said they wanted to have a family dinner to talk about my future, and I assumed we would discuss dorm options, meal plans maybe, which scholarship applications I should focus on. I came downstairs at 6 p.m. and found everyone already seated. My mom had made pot roast my favorite, which should have been a good sign. But the atmosphere felt wrong. Kyle was picking at his food, not making his usual jokes. My dad had that serious expression he only wore during important conversations. My mom kept glancing between them nervously. My dad cleared his throat and said, "Son, we need to talk about your college plans." I smiled, ready to discuss my classes, my major, my excitement. But his next words stopped me cold. "We have made a difficult decision as a family." My stomach dropped. My mom jumped in quickly, her voice too bright, too forced. "You know, Kyle's business has huge potential, honey. This could change everything for our family." I looked from her to my dad, not understanding. My dad continued, "We have decided to invest your college fund into Kyle's company. It is a smart move, Grant. This is about the whole family's future." The words hit me like a physical blow. I could not breathe. The dining room suddenly felt too small, too hot. The ticking of the clock on the wall became deafening. A car drove by outside, and I heard every detail of its engine. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. "My college fund," I finally managed to say. "The money you promised me." My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. My dad nodded, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Kyle needs capital to get his business off the ground properly. He needs to rent office space, hire an assistant, invest in marketing materials and software. This is a real opportunity. If his company takes off, it will benefit all of us." My mom reached across the table like she was going to touch my hand, but I pulled back. "You are smart, Grant," she said. "You can get scholarships. You have good grades. Kyle needs this more than you do right now. He does not have your options." I felt like I was drowning. "How much?" I asked quietly. My dad hesitated, then said, "All of it, $43,000, including what you saved." That number hung in the air like a death sentence. $43,000. 4 years of waking up at 5 a.m., 4 years of missing parties and football games and normal teenage experiences. 4 years of carefully saving 70% of every paycheck. 4 years of my parents' promises. Gone. Kyle finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "I will pay you back, I promise, bro. Once the company is profitable, you will get every cent back with interest." But he still would not look at me. He stared at his plate, pushing a piece of carrot around with his fork. I tried to argue. I explained that my acceptance letter was already here. I told them the scholarships I qualified for would only cover about 30% of tuition. I would need loans, big ones, without that fund. I might not even be able to go at all. My dad shook his head. "You can go to community college for 2 years, then transfer, or take a gap year and work full-time to save up. You are resourceful. You will figure it out." My mother added, "Do not be selfish, Grant. This is for the family's future. You should be proud that you are supporting your brother's dreams." That word selfish cut deeper than anything else. I had spent 4 years sacrificing everything, and now I was selfish for wanting what was promised to me. I looked at each of them, searching for any sign that they understood what they were doing to me. My dad looked uncomfortable but resolute. My mom looked pleading, like she needed me to agree so she could feel better about this decision. Kyle looked guilty, but said nothing more in my defense. I stood up slowly. My legs felt shaky. "I need to be alone," I said. Nobody tried to stop me. I walked upstairs to my room, closed the door, and locked it. Then I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark and cried harder than I had since I was a little kid. Everything I had worked for, every sacrifice, every early morning, every missed opportunity, all of it meant nothing. My family had chosen Kyle over me without hesitation. The next few weeks passed in a blur of numbness and anger. I declined State University's acceptance. That email was one of the hardest things I ever wrote. I enrolled in the community college 20 minutes from our house. I picked up a second job at a warehouse loading trucks 4 nights a week from 6 p.m. until midnight. Between the coffee shop, the warehouse, and classes, I barely slept. I moved out of my parents' house 3 weeks after that dinner. I found a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat in the cheaper part of town. It smelled like detergent and mildew, and the walls were thin enough that I could hear every conversation from the neighbors. But it was mine. I stopped going home except for necessary holidays. When I did visit, all I heard was excitement about Kyle's business. Kyle had rented a sleek office downtown with glass walls and modern furniture. He hired an assistant, a young woman named Stephanie, who seemed confused about what her actual job was. He bought a new car, a silver sedan that cost more than I made in a year. He had business cards printed on expensive textured paper. My parents would show me pictures on their phones, beaming with pride. "Look at what Kyle built," my dad would say. "This is just the beginning." I would nod and say nothing. The anger inside me grew colder and harder, like a stone in my chest. I stopped feeling sad. I just felt determined. I would build my own life, and I would do it without their help or approval. During the day, I attended community college. My classes were fine, mostly general education requirements, but I was restless. Engineering was my dream, but I could not afford to transfer to a 4-year school yet. So, at night, after my warehouse shift, I started teaching myself to code. I found free courses, online tutorials on YouTube forums where experienced programmers answered questions. I would get home at 12:30 a.m., eat something quick, then sit at my second-hand laptop until 3 or 4 in the morning, learning HTML, CSS, then JavaScript, then Python. I survived on 4 hours of sleep a night and too much coffee. My friends from high school stopped reaching out. I had no time for a social life. I had no time for anything except work and learning. It was brutal. There were nights I fell asleep at my keyboard and woke up with key marks on my face. There were days I was so tired I could barely focus on my college lectures. I failed a math test because I had worked 36 hours straight between my jobs and studying code. But I kept going. Every time I wanted to quit, I thought about that dinner table, about my mom calling me selfish, about Kyle refusing to meet my eyes. That anger fueled me. After 6 months of self-teaching, I started taking small freelance jobs. I built a website for a local restaurant for $300. I fixed bugs in someone's WordPress site for $150. The money was not much, but it was mine, earned through my own skills. I reinvested every cent into online courses that taught more advanced concepts. Then something changed. I found a forum for programmers where people shared advice and reviewed each other's code. An older developer named Mr. Harrison started commenting on my projects. He was a senior engineer at a tech company in the city, and he saw potential in my work. We started messaging back and forth. He gave me guidance on what to learn next, which technologies were most valuable, how to build a portfolio that would impress employers. He became an unofficial mentor, spending his free time helping some random community college kid he had never met in person. He told me to focus on web development first, get solid with JavaScript frameworks, then move into back-end programming, and eventually software engineering. I followed his advice exactly. Meanwhile, Kyle's business was falling apart. I heard bits and pieces through family, friends, and social media. 9 months after he got the money, his assistant quit. Clients he had promised never materialized. The fancy office was too expensive, and he was behind on rent. He had spent money on unnecessary equipment, elaborate marketing campaigns that went nowhere, and that new car. He did not understand basic business principles like cash flow or customer acquisition. He was playing entrepreneur with my college fund, and he was losing. By the time a full year had passed since that dinner, his company was completely bankrupt. The office was gone, the assistant was gone, the car got repossessed. Kyle moved back into my parents' house, 30 years old, with nothing to show for it except debt. My parents never called to tell me. I found out through a mutual friend who still lived in the neighborhood. They had to take out a loan to cover Kyle's remaining business debts because he had put some expenses on their credit cards. The $43,000 was completely gone, vanished into nothing. They never apologized to me. They never acknowledged what they had done. I thought about calling them, demanding an apology, making them admit they had ruined my life for Kyle's failed fantasy. But I did not. I just kept working. A year and a half after losing my college fund, something incredible happened. I applied for a junior developer position at a tech startup downtown. I did not expect much. I had no degree yet, just community college credits and a portfolio of freelance work. But they called me in for an interview. I showed them projects I had built, explained my self-teaching process, demonstrated my problem-solving skills. The lead developer, a woman named Patricia, seemed impressed. "You have more drive than most people with computer science degrees," she said. "When can you start?" They offered me $65,000 a year. I nearly cried during the salary negotiation. I threw myself into that job with everything I had. I was the first one in the office and the last to leave. I asked questions, volunteered for difficult projects learned from senior developers during lunch breaks. I absorbed everything like a sponge. After 6 months, I got promoted to mid-level developer with a raise. A year after that, a larger tech company recruited me. They offered me $90,000 plus benefits. I took it. I kept climbing. I specialized in back-end systems and cloud architecture. I earned certifications. I built a reputation for solving complex problems. 2 years after the night my parents gave away my future, I accepted a position as a senior software engineer, making $130,000 a year. 6 figures. More money than my dad had ever made. More money than Kyle would probably ever see. The first call from my mom came 3 weeks after I posted about my new job on social media. I had not talked to my parents in months. She called on a Thursday evening while I was at the grocery store. Her voice was cheerful, asking how I was doing, saying she missed me. We made small talk for a few minutes before she got to the real reason for the call. "Your father and I are having some financial difficulties," she said carefully. "Kyle is still looking for work and we had to help him with some expenses. Things are tight right now." There was a long pause. "We heard you are doing really well with your new job. We are so proud of you, honey. Maybe you could help us out a little, just until we get back on our feet." I stood in the produce section, holding a bag of apples, feeling surreal. "I have my own financial plans right now, Mom," I said calmly. "I am saving for my future since I had to build it from scratch." Her tone shifted, becoming tighter. "Grant, we are family. Family helps each other." I almost laughed. "Like you helped me." The silence was heavy. She made a hurt sound and hung up. That was the first call. It was not the last. Over the next few months, the calls kept coming. My dad called, asking if I could loan them $5,000 to catch up on bills. I said no. My mom called crying, saying they might lose the house. I suggested they downsize. Kyle texted me long messages about how sorry he was, how he never meant for things to turn out this way, how he would pay me back someday. I blocked his number. They tried different approaches. Sometimes it was guilt. "After everything we did for you growing up, you cannot help your family now." Other times it was shame. "We raised you better than this. What kind of son abandons his parents?" Once my dad tried anger. "You are being incredibly selfish, Grant. We gave you life. We fed you and clothed you for 18 years. You owe us." That one almost made me break. I called him back an hour later. "You mean after you gave my future to Kyle?" I said, my voice shaking. "After you told me to be proud of supporting the family while you handed my college fund to someone who wasted it in less than a year. After you called me selfish for wanting what you promised me, that is what I owe you for." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We thought we were doing the right thing." "No," I replied. "You thought Kyle needed it more because he could not do anything on his own. You thought I would be fine because I always am. You did not think about me at all." He hung up without responding. Extended family got involved. My aunt called, saying I should forgive and forget. My uncle sent me a Facebook message saying family was more important than money. Cousins I had not talked to in years suddenly had opinions about my character. I had to explain the full story multiple times. Some people understood. Others thought I was cold and unforgiving. I stopped caring what they thought. I had spent too many years caring about everyone else's opinion. The phone calls continued. Some weeks I got 3 or 4. I stopped answering numbers I recognized. They started calling from unknown numbers. It became harassment. Thanksgiving arrived. My mom sent a text invitation to dinner. I had not been home for a major holiday in over 2 years. Something in me decided this needed to end. I needed to face them one final time and close this chapter completely. I drove to my childhood home on Thanksgiving morning. The house looked smaller than I remembered, more worn down. The paint was chipping. The lawn needed work. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, gathering courage, then walked to the door. My mom answered with a surprised, hopeful smile. "Grant, you came." The house smelled like turkey and stuffing exactly like it always had on Thanksgiving. Kyle was in the living room looking older and tired. My dad was setting the table. We ate dinner in near silence. The tension was suffocating. Everyone made awkward small talk about weather and neutral topics, carefully avoiding anything real. After dinner, we moved to the living room. That was when my dad brought it up again. "Grant, we really need to discuss helping out the family. We are in a serious situation here." I had known this was coming. It was the only reason they wanted me there. I took a deep breath and looked at all 3 of them. "No," I said simply. My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Please, honey, we would not ask if we were not desperate." Kyle shifted uncomfortably, staring at the floor just like he had that night 2 years ago. I stood up and faced them. "You made your choice," I said clearly. "You chose Kyle over me. You took everything I worked for and gave it to him, and when it all fell apart, that was not my problem to fix." My mom started crying harder. "We thought Kyle would be successful. We thought it was a good investment." "You thought wrong," I said. There was no anger in my voice anymore, just cold fact. "And I paid the price for your mistake. Do you have any idea what the last 2 years were like for me? Working 2 jobs while going to school, living in that apartment where the heat barely worked in winter, teaching myself to code until 4 a.m. because I could not afford the education you promised me. Sleeping 4 hours a night for months, I built everything I have now with no help from any of you." My dad tried to interrupt. "We did help you. We raised you. We gave you a home and food and everything you needed growing up. And then you took away my future when Kyle needed money for his fantasy," I shot back. "You told me to be proud of supporting the family. Where was that pride when I was exhausted and alone and working myself into the ground? Where was the family support when I needed it?" My mom reached for my hand. "We are so sorry, Grant. We made a mistake, but we are still your family. You have to forgive us." I pulled my hand away, gently but firmly. "I do not have to do anything," I said. "I forgive you because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending this did not happen. And it definitely does not mean I am going to fix the mess you made." Kyle finally spoke, his voice rough. "I never wanted this to happen, Grant. I swear. I thought I could make it work and pay you back. I am so sorry." I looked at my brother. Really looked at him maybe for the first time in years. He looked broken. Part of me felt sorry for him. But that was not my responsibility either. "You are not sorry for what you did," I told Kyle. "You are sorry it did not work out. There is a difference." I turned back to my parents. "I built my life without you. I learned I did not need you. And you do not get to guilt me into saving you from your own choices now that I am successful. That is not how this works." My dad stood up, his face red. "So that is it. You are just going to walk away from your family." "You walked away from me first," I replied calmly. I am just following your example. I picked up my jacket and headed for the door. My mom called after me, but I did not turn around. I walked out of that house and felt lighter with every step. The weeks and months that followed were peaceful in a way I had never experienced. I stopped answering their calls entirely. I blocked numbers. I unfriended family members on social media who kept sending me guilt trip messages. I focused on my life, my career, my friends from work who actually valued me. I started going to therapy to process everything. My therapist helped me understand that what my parents did was financial abuse, that their continued harassment was manipulation, and that setting boundaries was not only okay but necessary. I began to heal properly for the first time. My career continued to grow. I got another promotion. I started mentoring junior developers the way Mr. Harrison had mentored me. I moved into a nice apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. I bought furniture I actually liked, instead of whatever was cheapest. I took a vacation to the mountains and hiked for a week, something I had never had time for before. I started dating someone I met through friends, someone who thought my work ethic was admirable rather than expected. Life became good. Not perfect, but genuinely good. The pain from what my parents did never completely disappeared, but it transformed into something else. It became fuel that had pushed me further than I might have gone otherwise. If they had kept their promise, I probably would have gone to State University, gotten my engineering degree, and found a decent job. I would have been fine. But fine was not the same as exceptional. Being abandoned by my family forced me to become someone who relied only on himself. It made me hungry in a way comfort never could have. I developed skills beyond what any degree program would have taught me, because I had to learn everything the hardest way possible. I built resilience that most people never needed to develop. In a twisted way, their betrayal had given me something valuable, even though that was never their intention. I learned other lessons, too. I learned that family was not just about blood. The people who showed up for me, like Mr. Harrison, like my coworkers, who became real friends, like my therapist, who helped me process trauma. Those were my real family. I learned that you could not force people to value you no matter how much you sacrificed or achieved. My parents might never understand what they did wrong. Kyle might never truly face the consequences of his entitlement. That was not my problem to solve. I learned that the best revenge was not anger or retaliation. It was building a life so good that their opinions stopped mattering. It was succeeding beyond what they thought was possible and doing it entirely on my own terms. Some nights I sat in my apartment with the city lights spread out below me, and my phone would buzz with another call from my parents' number. I never answered anymore. I would look at the screen, feel nothing, and set it back down. Sometimes I wondered if they had learned anything. Probably not. People like that rarely did. They would keep believing they were right, that I was the ungrateful one, that somehow their choices were justified. I did not need them to understand. I did not need their apology or their approval. I had built something they could never take away from me again. There was one last thing I needed to do for closure. I found Mr. Harrison's email and wrote him a long message thanking him for everything. I told him how much his mentorship had meant, how it had literally changed the trajectory of my life. He wrote back, saying he was proud of me, and that paying it forward to other young developers was thanks enough. So, that was what I did. I started volunteering to teach coding to kids from low-income families, kids who might not have access to the opportunities others took for granted. I gave them what I wished someone had given me earlier, a chance to build their own futures. One evening, about 3 years after that Thanksgiving confrontation, I was working late at the office when I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line said, "From Kyle." My first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity won. I opened it. It was long and rambling, clearly written over multiple sessions. Kyle said he had gotten sober, that he was in therapy, that he was working a regular job in customer service and trying to rebuild his life from scratch. He said he finally understood what he had taken from me, and how his entitlement had destroyed our relationship. He did not ask for forgiveness or money. He just said he was sorry, and that he hoped someday I found peace. At the end, he wrote, "You were right about everything. I was not sorry it did not work out. I was sorry I got caught. But I am different now. I know you will probably never believe that, and I do not blame you. I just wanted you to know." I read it 3 times. Part of me wanted to respond with anger, to list every way he had failed to make sure he knew the depth of what he had done. But I did not. I closed the email and archived it. Maybe Kyle had changed. Maybe he had not. Either way, it was not my concern anymore. His journey was his own, just like mine was mine. I did not need his apology to move forward. I had already moved forward years ago. Now, sitting in my apartment on a quiet Sunday evening, I thought about everything that had happened. My parents wanted me to be proud of supporting the family when they gave my future to Kyle. Well, I was proud now, just not in the way they expected. I was proud of the man I became when I had to do it all on my own. I was proud that I survived being abandoned and came out stronger. I was proud that I learned to value myself when nobody else would. They wanted me to sacrifice for the family. Instead, I learned to build a family of people who would never ask me to sacrifice my dreams for their comfort. That was the real victory. The tables had turned completely. They were struggling while I thrived. They needed me while I needed nothing from them. Some people might think I should help them anyway, that being the bigger person meant forgetting the past and offering financial support. But those people did not understand what it felt like to have your family look you in the eye and tell you that you mattered less. They did not know what it was like to work yourself to exhaustion for years because the people who were supposed to protect you chose someone else. Being the bigger person did not mean letting people continue to hurt you. It meant healing yourself and moving forward with or without their understanding. I turned off my laptop and walked to the window. The city stretched out endlessly, full of lights and life and possibility. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably sitting in that old house wondering why their son would not save them. Kyle was probably working his customer service job, trying to figure out who he was without their enabling. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I felt no obligation to fix them either. They had taught me an important lesson, even if it was not the one they intended. They taught me that the only person you could truly rely on was yourself. They taught me that promises meant nothing without action. They taught me that sometimes the people who were supposed to love you most would let you down in ways you never imagined possible. But they also accidentally taught me that I was stronger than I ever knew, that I could survive betrayal and come out better on the other side, that success built on your own back was sweeter than anything handed to you. That family was a choice, not an obligation. Those lessons were worth more than $43,000 could ever buy. So, in a strange way, maybe I should thank them. They wanted me to be proud of supporting the family, and now I was proud just not of supporting them. I was proud of supporting myself. And that made all the difference. Have you ever had your family choose someone else over you? Have you ever had to build your life from nothing after losing everything you worked for? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear that they can survive betrayal and come out stronger. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the best response to people who underestimate you is simply to prove them wrong by living well. Take care of yourselves out there, and never let anyone convince you that your dreams matter less than someone else's comfort.